Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Left Wing Podcast. Wishing you all a happy Christmas. On today's show, we will be looking back on what was a very busy weekend of festive rugby. Will Slattery here with you, as always. Delighted to be joined by Luke Fitzgerald. Merry Christmas, Luke. How are you?
Merry Christmas, Well, yeah, great little break. So nice to be kind of getting back into the swing of things. I've eaten close to my weight if possible, I'd say in the last couple of days, and drunk my fill. So I'd say I'm kind of ready to get back to a bit of normality. So this was my moment of back to normality.
Yeah, we did you a favour. I did you a favour of organising this podcast. Pulled you back from the brink, is it?
I know. Look, it was a good one. To fairness, you always want to get one in as soon as possible after the Interpros. So, no, great to be back in. Looking forward to it. Do you have a nice break yourself?
Yeah, nice break. But rugby never really stops. Never really stops. That's what I like about it. Still got plenty to watch over the Christmas period. Today, as I said, we're going to be discussing the two games really from the weekend. Like Ulster Connacht was the first one, Ulster 29, Connacht 24 on the sports grounds. But then the big one, that was kind of the teeing up Munster Leinster in Thomond Park. Always a great fixture this time of year. Leinster 13, Munster 8. They got revenge for Croke Park. You could tell by the celebrations that they enjoyed that one, even how they celebrated that first try from Van der Fleer early in the game. I think there was a bit more gusto to it than they ordinarily would after a try, certainly in the early stages of a game. I thought it was a really good game, actually, like in terms of just as a contest. I just found it very absorbing, tight, tense, definitely a bit of needle between the teams, which you'd like to see. Leinster ultimately getting out on the right side of it, even though Munster probably had more to play. Leinster's defence, I suppose, held firm. Like what kind of jumped out to you about how things played out?
Yeah, look, I thought it was very physical, wasn't it? Really enjoyed that part of it. I was kind of surprised at some of the commentary around the games. Obviously we'll touch on Connacht Ulster afterwards, but in terms of Munster and Leinster, like I thought it was a kind of riveting contest. There was lots going on, lots of niggle, lots of bite. I think you're right on the assessment. It looked like they had logged in some of the kind of carry on by the Munster lads after the match in Croke Park. I kind of wanted to dish a bit of that out themselves. I'd probably rather they were a little bit more stoic, but definitely, look, it was good to see some of the emotion there as well. It was very hotly contested. I know people want to see a high-scoring game, but part of me kind of really enjoyed the arm wrestle. I don't know about you. Did you?
Yeah, big time. I thought some of the hits were huge. Like Shane Daly got Kieran Frawley with a really good one.
Great tackle.
And to be fair, Frawley made a really good kind of shoestring tackle on Haley. The ball was being put out wide, and Frawley kind of jumped, just got him down to the ground. I thought some of the individual tackles were very impressive, and it added to an atmosphere. Yeah, like I have seen commentary about the quality, and look, Leinster's attack wasn't great. Like they didn't really offer that much. But just in terms of parking the kind of big picture and just focusing on what I watched, I was riveted as well. I thought that kind of niggle and that kind of physical edge really brought kind of something out in the atmosphere, I thought.
Yeah, and look, Interpros are often like that. There's Irish jerseys on the line. There's always other factors kind of happening, and kind of internal battles within the game that do make it just a little bit more uptight going into them. I found not all the Interpros I played were kind of vintage displays, if you know what I mean, with like kind of some unbelievable tries. Oftentimes they were, maybe it was a moment of brilliance. And in fairness, I thought the game had a few of them. I thought Munster got a little bit lucky with the try that they got in terms of I think someone leaves, Tyburn leaves it. It's a nice read defensively, but he lets the ball drop and it goes to Crowley. It's a lovely dummy, and then he puts Kelly away, isn't it, for the try. I actually thought Leinster got a little bit unlucky with that. Munster got a little bit lucky. But then I thought, on the flip side, I actually thought Munster opened Leinster up a few times quite nicely. I thought they looked like they figured out that kind of defence. And if I thought James Lowe had a rough enough day defensively, actually. I thought he looked like he was a little bit off the pace and couldn't get high enough. And Munster were kind of doing that thing that I thought Leinster did. And Ireland, actually, at the height of their powers, were doing quite well against those hard-up defences. They were tucking that. People can't see my hands there. I'm always conscious that I'm doing this. But the runners were kind of tucked in almost behind each other. The runners weren't the attacking team weren't spread to the width, if you know what I mean. They were kind of they were staying tight to each other. So it's very hard for the defenders to come all the way in and keep catching. And if some guy, and it's very hard for your wingers to do it, by the way. And that was why I thought Lowe kept getting caught out a little bit. Is that the guys were biting in really nicely and coming in tight, but there was one more Munster player for a little pass, and he was almost too far away to get in at him, and they exposed him a couple of times, I thought. And I did think the one before half time, the Nankiville pass, like that was tight. That looked really tight to me. And they looked like they were away there as well. So I thought Munster, didn't have much of the game, but they showed some nice. They had some nice moments, I thought, and they could well have kind of snatched that one.
Well, like if you look at it, they had more territory, possession, offloads, line breaks. They beat more defenders. Like if you just look at the raw stats, they definitely created more.
No, they did, but they didn't. I wouldn't say there was. Did it feel like they were kind of cutting edge? It felt like Leinster were.
I thought Leinster, not that they were comfortable defensively, but like. The Leinster defence was fairly firm for the majority, but Munster did get in around them though, as you say too. So maybe
and they showed some good quality. I felt like there were probably more moments where it felt dangerous rather than concerted danger. I agree with you on like they had more like as in had more possession and everything, but Leinster never felt like, and I never felt panicked about it. Do you know what I mean? Until maybe the last couple of minutes, where you're kind of going, "Oh, like they're under pressure here now." When the kind of the siege finally broke, if you like. But it was a great contest, and yeah, I mean, it was good to watch. Enjoyed it.
What did you make of the Leinster performance generally? Like, obviously, the defence is getting a lot of, I suppose, praise and attention for how they held firm in that regard. But people are saying like they didn't create a huge amount though. Like they didn't look great with the ball. They didn't look that threatening with the ball. Like, and Richie Murphy after the Ulster game last week kind of said, look, we know what we're getting from Leinster. They just try to batter the door down. Like, so that's kind of a theme that's emerging now. Like, what did you make of that part of the game?
Well, I kind of like Leinster playing like that. If I'm being honest, the battering down the door. I think they've got like two Irish packs. You know what I mean? So I'd always be thinking of trying to impose myself on a team if I was Leinster, first of all, physically through my pack. I think there's not many teams that they can't go head to head with, in terms of, what have you normally got? You normally got 14 forwards on the pitch. Most teams are selecting 14 forwards now. Leinster's 14 forwards are pretty, like, they're hard to beat. There's not many teams that would have the same, depth there, I think, as Leinster. So I always like them to be thinking that way to start. But you would like to see a little bit more quality. You would like to see them a little bit tidier on the ground with the ball. You'd like to see a few more shapes and a bit more creativity. Absolutely. I completely agree with you with that assessment. But I'd still be very pleased coming away from Thomond Park, when you're not playing great, to come away with a victory. And I think it was a deserved victory for the most part. I think they looked pretty comfortable for most of it, bar a few moments. So very pleasing from their perspective, I would imagine. I think you could kind of sense that from Leo Cullen. And he did say, part of me disagrees with kind of how he said it, but if you saw his press conference afterwards, Will, he was talking about, there's other factors at play that make it quite challenging for you to be playing open rugby. He said you can try all you want, you can go out and want to be expansive, but that can be tricky. The other side of me always feels that you'd like to be saying to yourself, well, if we're going to be imposing ourselves on a team, but let's make sure that they don't have those opportunities to slow the ball down. So whatever, come up with some kind of plan to negate that, or to not let them have entry into your game, and to allow yourself to have, probably moments where you can be a bit more expansive and a bit more creative. So do you know what I mean? There's kind of two sides to that coin. So I kind of get what he's saying. I agree, but I'd always be thinking, well, if we're the best team, and we think we're the best team, and we won this competition last year, well, we think we should be dominating teams. And yes, we know they're coming to spoil, but we know that if we play to the best of our ability, and we're comfortable with the plan that we have, that they shouldn't be able to stop us, and they shouldn't be able to negate what we're trying to do, and they shouldn't be able to make it a messy occasion. So there's two sides to that, and I probably lean a little bit more. I think over time they'll need to be more expansive. And look, he was right. Look, there was a slippy ball and all that. It was a very physical game, so they probably went out thinking, well, let's muscle our way through into this one, and that's probably a good place to start in terms of trying to get a win. And it had that feel off it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like it felt like they were trying to be niggly, trying to be, very, very physical, trying to take them on, making sure that they put a foot down earlier on, a marker down, rather than probably thinking expansive. Even if they'd like to have done that, and they probably had a plan to be, have a few nice moves, etc.
It's not even necessarily like the word expansive. I wouldn't necessarily even go that far. It's just more like the quality of like their movement of the ball, I don't think is as good as it
Yeah.
should be. There was one in the first half where Munster knocked it on and Leinster had numbers out wide, and they just like the ball went to ground when there was a bit of space to put someone. I think it was maybe Ioane could have been put away, up the touchline or near the touchline, and that's
I
more.
remember it. Yeah.
That's more what I'm thinking of. It's not necessarily saying, oh, like they should, because like they would, as you say, they had an international pack out. They would have had an edge there, so that like it makes sense to go after that. But just when they actually have the ball, I just would have liked to have seen them. In terms of you're looking at them progressing in Europe, in particular, when the physical advantage won't be there. If they play Toulouse or if they play a team with a really good pack, they won't be able to bully them or be as physical. I don't think there. So they will need to be a little better with the ball.
Yeah, I'd agree. You definitely need to have those moments. I can't think of a team like even those great Saracens teams that were kind of built on that unbelievable defense. They still had some magic moments in attack. So even all the teams all the way through the competition that have gone on to win the cup, and I'd say even to be honest with you, Will, for the most part, the URC or the league, like you need to be able to play some ball and to open teams up and to take pressure off yourself as well and build a bit of a lead. Like that was on a knife edge. You saw that Munster get that try, and all of a sudden you're like, oof, like now there's serious pressure on here now. You can feel it, and you can feel it kind of going through the team. So if you can't score tries and you can't open teams up, I think you leave yourself a little bit exposed that way to not kind of killing off an opposition player, and it means that you're expending lots of energy all the time to try and get wins. And you don't want to do that every week. You want to be able to grind out the wins, but you don't have to grind out every single win. Do you know what I'm kind of saying? I think good teams have the ability to put you away as well. So they will need to develop that, and they will need to find ways to be a little bit more creative. I would still say that, there's still a few guys that are probably not in there that long. Like Ioane's probably in one of the key positions really for, your attack, which is obviously that 13 slot. He's still finding his feet a little bit, I would imagine. I think Hugo Keenan adds a massive amount to the team at there. I think the way he can kind of bring his wingers into play, I think that's an underestimated part of his game. So I think they still have a few pieces to come back in that will help them along the way, Will. And remember, Keenan is a very experienced guy at this stage as well. So, whether it's Byrne or whether it's, Prendergast or whoever it is, I do think that having someone like him does take the pressure off, and it gives you a sense of calm throughout the team. And remember, someone in his position will be feeding in great information to the inside, so that always improves. They're kind of intangible things to a certain extent, Will, but experience outside you and the information and the positions that they take up, like aligned with their abilities. His ball handling abilities outstanding as well. I think all those factors will help Leinster, I think, as the season goes on. I'm less concerned about them delivering that. I think they'll get there. I'm more conscious of them fronting up and showing a real gritty edge to them at this point. And I hope that they can kind of keep that going through the season. I do think you're right. They'll have to start putting some teams away a bit better. But I was very pleased. I think they're in a really good position now to kind of keep this momentum going.
Oh yeah, 6 wins in a row. They have Connacht on New Year's Day next up in the Aviva. What did you make of the referee's performance? Peter Martin, he's getting a lot of scrutiny, I suppose. Like he was very involved in the game, I would say. Clayton McMillan was discussing the breakdown and saying he thought Leinster were doing things there that should have been penalised more. Leo Cullen then on the other side was saying, I thought our scrum was much more dominant than we maybe got credit for. To be fair, I would say it was a tough game to referee. Like there was a lot going on. Both teams were on the edge, both physically and just generally. And it wasn't an easy day at the office. Like it wasn't just one like you're not going up to ref a Leinster Zebra game where it's just going to be not much incident and it'll be fairly straightforward. Like
one-way traffic each side.
Yeah, there was lots to unpack. But was he a focal point for you, or is it just coaches being coaches and just kind of having a little bit of a moan after a game? What do you reckon?
I wasn't really thinking about him a massive amount, Will. I do agree. Like when on reflection here, like I do think he was involved. I'm
not asking you to bury. I'm not asking you to bury the guy either. Sorry, I'm literally just because the two coaches just brought him up, and I've heard a lot about the ref in the aftermath. And it's funny because I actually watched the second half. I didn't have the sound on in the second half, and it's funny like when you don't hear the ref voice as much, it doesn't you're not like. It's not feeding into your thinking as much, So when I saw this commentary afterwards, I was like, geez, I didn't think there was particularly egregious moments where, there's some big, match-turning incident, perhaps. Both teams seem to have their various frustrations.
Yeah, and look, I think I've probably accepted at this stage that you're going to get that. And if you get most of the big ones right, I probably will give you a little bit of room for maneuver if you like. Um, yeah, look, I do think look, it was very hotly contested, and these games are like, there's lots of people in your ear as well. I mean, I don't know if you probably heard a bit of that as well. Like, if you listen back, like, so everyone's competing for every single inch all day for like, nearly from when you step into the stadium. Do you know what I mean? Both teams are trying to, they're in your ear about, scrum, ruck, how you interpreted the last game, how the other saw the other team playing. So like, it's nonstop kind of competition. And I feel like these are difficult ones to referee. I thought both of the coaches probably had a case. And I do think that, look, the only thing is Munster were very spoiled. Like, they spoiled a lot the last time that the two teams would have, I'm sure the ref would have watched that game. I do think that they spoiled a lot in Croke Park and got away with a bit as well. So look, it's honours even there for me at this point. Could he have been better? Yeah, he could have. And was he involved? Yes. But I mean, I don't know what's better. I mean, if you let it go, like, I've been doing a bit of thinking about the refereeing situation, because I do think the game as a spectacle is struggling a little bit at the moment, Will. I do think that. And I come back to the same things. I don't love the kicking thing, but I still think the offside line is not being ref correctly. And I just think they've never done anything significant with that. And that makes it really, really difficult to play. It really does. I think the linesmen are really shirking any kind of responsibility there. I think they need to put more responsibility on them to be refereeing the offside line. I think they need to start pinging teams non-stop for like kind of 6 months to give teams a little bit of space to play. I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but while we're on the refereeing subject, I've been thinking about it because the game's getting a lot of stick from a lot of people. Like, I have to say, I really enjoyed that game the weekend. I knew what I was getting. I thought with the weather being a bit slippery, that it was going to be, tetchy, and it was going to be tight, and there was, I felt like there was a good bit on the line, bragging rights wise. But I still felt like when I watched the game, I was like, I'd love to see a little bit more space for the attackers. What they could do with an extra foot back from the defensive line. It just feels like you're so suffocated now. I watch the game and I just think, whoa, like, it is difficult to play well. Like, it's becoming more difficult to be creative and to open teams up. And I think that's still a key issue that they have never resolved. So I feel like they've avoided it because it's so, it happens so often in the game, and I don't want to be yellow carding people for it. But that was one thing I did think the referee didn't get great. He didn't do great on. And it's difficult to defend. Like, Leinster coming so hard off the line all the time that they're difficult to referee there as well. But so was Munster were hard enough off the line as well. But that was my one thing, that my kind of gripe, if you're asking me, with the refereeing performance. It's been a kind of wider spread one. I was watching that going, this is difficult. Like, it's very hard to play here. Yeah, I don't know.
One thing I found interesting about the ref as well, when I was listening to the ref mic, was like, Leinster's scrum started with a couple of penalties. Porter was getting rewarded for his dominance, and you could hear Tadhg Byrne talking to the ref, being like, Porter is scrummaging illegally, he's scrummaging illegally. And then the tide started to shift, and I thought the discussion, Tadhg Byrne in the ref's ear, seemed to have a bit of payoff, because he didn't get as many calls after that. It was kind of just asking Leinster to play away, and I just found it interesting, because obviously Byrne and Porter are Ireland teammates, and ordinarily Byrne would probably be stumping for him. Oh, he's not illegal. But when it's Leinster Munster, he's like, oh, look at Porter, he's going, look, that's the most illegal thing I've ever seen. I just thought that was funny, because it did actually seem to pay off. It shows the value of being a good captain, or having doing it at the right time. And I still think Caelan Doris is learning that. I still think when you hear Doris talking to refs, he doesn't seem to be getting as much pay or than maybe some other captains. But I thought Tadhg Byrne, with a careful word in the ear, actually maybe had an influence, and I just thought it was a funny thing, because they're obviously usually Ireland teammates as well.
Yeah, and Tadhg always strikes me as probably a calmer guy. Doris seems to be, whatever way he approaches the referee, seems to be, I don't know whether it irks somewhere. It just seems to get under the skin somewhere. It might not be his fault. I think sometimes you can get this kind of reputation, and it just kind of follows you around, kind of similar to the Porter scrummaging thing, where you kind of say, here, hang on, could this be happening? Like, or is it more likely that Porter's doing something illegal? I could easily see that conversation, and it twigging something with the referee going, do you know what, actually, I don't want to get pinged in the when the referees are looking back on his performance and assessing him. I'd say he was kind of going, oh, this doesn't feel right. Maybe I'm not seeing it exactly as I should. So Yeah, no, I think that's interesting,
And
and you would wonder.
yeah, and like it's funny, Doris is the captain, like because he competes at every ruck, like you could say over competes. Like,
Oh,
interesting as the when you're the captain in that role. I suppose it didn't do Richie McCaw any harm, but like,
McCall, I was
but
just going to say,
McCaw,
yeah.
like he's retired a long time now. Like that's 10. Like, does Richie McCaw have the success he did in doing that role like now in 2025 as he did in 2015?
Pocock was the captain too, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's difficult to know, isn't it?
Doris at every breakdown is. Every single ruck is pushing it, like seriously
He's
pushing it.
right on the edge, isn't he? I
Yeah,
think he's right on
he's
the edge.
probably lucky
Oh,
he doesn't give away a few more pens. I think.
yeah, and you wonder, does he get a little bit of extra leeway because he's the
Or
captain?
maybe
I always feel like
it's a benefit then, and that rather.
that's always my thinking on it. I always felt like McCall got one more opportunity, if you like.
More than one, definitely more than one.
Whatever way you want to look at it, but he always got like, they were like, that's a bad one. One more of them and you're done. Whereas someone else might go, here, that was highly illegal. Get off the park for 10 minutes. I always felt like he got one more because he was the captain. But no, it's an interesting one, and I do think Byrne, I mean, it's really grown into that leadership role. I mean, look, it's a funny one with Byrne because I think he's probably the best player in the URC, if like he's bloody close anyway. I mean, he's man a match every week. Look, his leadership, maybe I haven't really been thinking about him and giving him the credit he deserves on the kind of leadership aspect, because I always feel like he's one of those guys who leads from the front. I always wonder, is he kind of a big speaker? But no, I think you're right. I think that was a night. I think he did that quite well. He seems like a calm guy. I don't know if you saw him in the interview after like the game. He's quite a cool, calm character. He was always that way, actually. In fairness, off the pitch when he was in Leinster, he was a young lad, but I'm sure he's a bigger personality now that he's got all the accolades and he's very senior in all every team he's been in nearly, I suppose. One of the best players in the world, I suppose. But yeah, no, it's an interesting one, and you wonder about the dynamic. I mean, Doris, I just love Doris. Like, he's such a good player, but he does, like, I wonder, does it help having him there? He does have a bit of a reputation with the referee. I wonder, you'd never be taking the captaincy off him, but I do wonder, is there value in thinking, Byrne is Byrne more, a more natural fit for that, and is he a calmer guy? Would he be able to get more out of the referees? But we're veering off on a bit of a tangent there.
What did you make of Munster's performance generally? Like, obviously, they got the win in Croke Park, which was a great moment for their team and the life cycle of it, like taking the scalp of Leinster, a full strength Leinster team. That was their 7th consecutive defeat in Thomond Park to Leinster, though, which, while they won in Croke Park, I'm sure they'd love to deliver in front of their home fans as well. And they had opportunities. Like, that wasn't a vintage Leinster performance. Like, I think people are in agreement. They defended well, but they didn't. It's as if, like, there's been some years, like, say last year, they won and beat Munster by 20 points in Thomond Park. There's been other years when Leinster have gone down and looked really slick. And while they defended well, like, that game was there for the taking. How do Munster reflect on it? Because I thought there was some good individual performances. I thought Thomas Ahern looked really, really good. He was a guy who definitely caught my eye. Like, how did you assess what Munster brought to the table?
I thought it was a little bit. It was a little bit messy. I think they should, if they'd had a bit more control, a bit more poise at certain times. I think they could have got the win. Or they certainly could have put pressure on Leinster earlier than they did, rather than kind of it being the last kind of 5-10 minutes where you're kind of going, okay, Leinster are really feeling it now. I thought Leinster felt like they were relatively comfortable for a lot of it, and I think that's kind of important if they want to kick on and be that team. I think that's going to be the next step for them. Do you think you could kind of see at the scrum as well? There was like they just suffer a little bit with Leinster bringing on all the boys and all that kind of power off the bench. I thought the McCarthy brothers were very effective.
They've been brilliant the last few weeks, haven't they?
They've been really. I saw them actually out. It was on my. Sorry, it was just funny. I saw the two lads out with Gary Ringrose and Tyke Furlong on there. They were on their night out, and I was on my night out with my pals, school pals, and we were in Sheehan's. And the lads were, I think, all the Leinster lads were meeting up. They're in groups of 4 or whatever. They're all meeting up a little bit later on, but they started off in their own little groups. But like, a lot of my pals are rugby players, you know what I mean? But they couldn't get over the size of the two of them.
Yeah,
it's like they're absolutely. That's what I said. It was like, you're like Bebop and Rocksteady. Yeah, they're impressed. They've been really impressive, haven't they? And I think I probably underestimated how important Joe McCarthy is to that team. And I do think Dogbo is a guy I'd love to see kind of kick on to that next stage and be that kind of enforcer. I mean, you see the size of him at the pitch, Will, isn't he? He's an impressive guy. And I did think more of Munster's bigger players probably did need to stand up and have bigger performances in the pack. I just thought they were just, I thought Leinster had the edge in the pack, if I was being honest, and that was kind of the real decider in the game. Um, and you know, what else did I think about Munster? I thought they could have been a bit stingier. Like I thought they could have been a bit smarter at times. There was a few there's a few penalties and things where I thought, you know what, like did you need to give that away? There's a few of those kind of moments as well. Will just maybe being a little bit cuter, having a little bit more poise, and they could have been in a better position earlier in the game. Um, and if they put more, I think if they put more pressure on Leinster, I still have my doubts about Leinster when the pressure comes on, and I didn't think they did that early enough. With the kind of accuracy, and look, they haven't had the last couple of weeks have been a little bit shaky for them, so they do need to catch themselves on pretty quickly here, They've got off to a great start. I like the new coach. I like all the new soundings from the new coach. He seems like a tough guy. He seems like a perfect guy to kind of get Munster back to kind of where they belong at the top table. And I would like to see them kind of kick on for the rest of the season. I'd like to, just as a neutral, because I think if they're strong, Irish rugby's strong. Do you know what I mean? I think we can't have Leinster having all these players in there. So I genuinely would like to see that from an Irish perspective. And they've just had a little bit of a lull here that they need to kind of arrest pretty quickly and kind of correct. And I think the trait that I've seen that across all the games that has probably been the most disappointing is probably just that little bit of accuracy and poise at the right times. They haven't been able to kind of, really kind of capitalize on some pressure that they've had, kind of consistent pressure in some games. And that's the big thing for me is a little bit of accuracy. I think once they get that, I think they'll be kind of back motoring again, but they need to catch on quick because, before, this is kind of a crucial period for them and they can kind of consolidate where they are in the table, or they could kind of skid back down and be in a bit of a dogfight,
Yeah, because they have Ulster away next. And depending on who's able to play and who isn't able to play on Friday, like, they might be without Crowley, they might be without Ty Byrne potentially, or Craig Casey. Like they lost to the Stormers at home, then they lost to Leinster at home. Now they have Ulster away. Like all of a sudden, there could be 3 league defeats in a row, and then obviously you had the Bath defeat and a Gloucester win in the Champions Cup in between.
I was going to say the Bath one was a little bit like that wasn't great. That was a bad day out, and the Stormers won, like they were in a good position in that game. You know what I mean? Like this, so that's kind of a little bit of sloppiness. Kind of way. Like they did, even if they lost to Bath, right? Well, I think that loss and now this loss, you're kind of saying to yourself, "Come on, we need to catch ourselves on here a little bit." This is a little bit. It looks a little bit skiddy because Gloucester are not great. Do you know what I mean? And even how they got over the line there, like that try before, I was on the edge of halftime. The kind of Haley one where he kind of he gets through. It just looks a little bit messy. Will they got a little bit lucky in that one to kind of I think put the pressure on. They killed the game off well enough in the end, but all the big teams they've played, they've looked a little bit sketchy, so they need to get it right quick.
Yeah, that Stormers one is still the big frustration of this whole block, because like that one they actually played well in and were well on top. The other games, like say Bath, it was Bath, they're a good team and they started terribly and it was kind of away from them from the get-go. Whereas
that was sloppiness too, Will, though.
I know it was. I'm not excusing it necessarily.
But that's what I'm saying about the kind of recurring team. I thought they still had some good moments against Leinster and they kind of just didn't capitalize. Even I was talking about that 4 pass just before halftime. Like that was still whatever way you look at that, it looked tight to me, but it was still a 4 pass and there's probably no need. They actually probably had Leinster fairly well split. So didn't need to push the pass that hard. Didn't need to push themselves. So it's just little things. And even against, you look at the Ty Byrne penalty then against kind of Bath, things like that. Is you talked about the most disappointing, and I'd agree the Stormers one was probably the most disappointing. But like letting that kind of lead go, that's not what you don't do that at home. Like that's not, really, really good teams don't do that. So, and they want to be a really, really good team. I think they've got a lot of the tools to be. So, it seems to me like the mental issues at the moment are probably the thing that's holding them back a little bit, and they need to just catch a hold of themselves quickly and get that accuracy back in the game.
It's always kind of focused on the out halves. Obviously, Harry Byrne ended up starting against Munster versus Jack Crowley. Sam Prendergast, Leo Cullen mentioned, was rested, but the way I look at it, like he could have rested him for the Ulster game potentially and started him at Thomond Park if he felt that he was the starting Leinster out half. That's how I'm looking at it. So I don't know. You said after the Leicester game you thought Harry Byrne is the starting 10 going forward, and I think the way it's been selected over Christmas would back that up. But what did you make of Harry Byrne versus Jack Crowley, that battle? Because it's very much, it appears to be a three-way battle for Ireland at the moment, especially considering Andy Farrell brought up Harry Byrne a couple of times, during November in his own press conferences. So what did you make of how the two out halves played?
Yeah, look, it was a difficult game, wasn't it? I mean, we talked about, so like we've talked about kind of the accuracy and attack for both teams, or the opportunity, that creative flair was never really there, and they're probably the guys that lead a lot of that. So yeah, that side of the ball, it's quite clear. It looks like Prendergast is quite clearly the best guy there. You know what I mean? Everyone else is struggling to get their teams kind of moving well, from an attack perspective. But the other two guys mentally look very strong to me in some, in other respects. You could see Jack Crowley drawing, like even at the end when the ref gives the pen, or the knock on, Leinster go down on it. Like, he's all over the referee at the end of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love how gritty he is. I love that, even the little dummy to put Kelly away. Like, it was a lovely touch as well. So he still has his moments, but can't get it all together from an attacking perspective and get the team consistently moving forward. He doesn't have. There is a difference between, I think, him and the other two. Even I would put Byrne in this. Maybe not so much Frawley, but Byrne and Prendergast have a better passing quality. They've got more distance, they've got more deceptiveness, they've got a bit more in them there. That's the area of his game where I think he's still a little bit off. You could see, though, he's very dangerous. He's a dangerous runner with the ball. I think his kicking has improved, but needs to be better still off the deck, in my opinion. And then you saw the one he puts out on the full, like, kind of inexcusable stuff, really, isn't it? So he still has those moments where with the boot, he should really be better. I thought Byrne looked very measured off the deck. You can rely on him. You can see he's a good tackler, same as Crowley. And I do think Leinster will get a little bit better in what they show from an attacking perspective, by just virtue of some of the bodies coming back into the fold. But he's still not running them the same as Prendergast is running the team. So it's pick your poison a little bit. For me, I would always have. I think you have a better chance of winning if you have Byrne in there. And it looks to me like the coaches maybe think the same way, because this was definitely going to be the toughest fixture of the lot over Christmas, and they picked Byrne first. So I would agree with sounds like your assessment as well, is that it looks like Byrne probably has a nose ahead at the moment. But if he wants to cement his place, he will have to get the team humming a little bit better. That just has to happen, otherwise he's going to be, it's going to be nip and tuck for the big games, and I think he's probably got to remember that, and we should always be thinking about this, like, Farrell absolutely loves Prendergast, and he will give Prendergast extra, he gets an extra bit of rope to not tackle. It's a work on, as he said, because he wants to have that bit of attacking, in his teams. He wants his teams to be attacking a little bit more fluidly, and that's what he places more emphasis on. I don't agree with that. I think a lot of Irish other fans and rugby supporters don't believe that's correct, but it's his team, and he's been a very successful coach, and that's what he wants. So I think Byrne will have to up his game in that respect if he wants to get his hands on the green jersey, as will Crowley.
Yeah, because even for the Leicester game that Harry Byrne started, like, it was kind of similar to the Munster game, actually, in many ways, in terms of, like, having the roll up the sleeves, and it was dog it out. It wasn't like Leinster didn't attack very well that day either. Now, some of that is down to, like, individual errors as well. Like, it's kind of, you can't really lump on the out half when, like, Robbie Henshaw's dropping a bad ball, or, like, going
bad kicks. There's so many, but there's about 4 or 5 horrendous kicks where people were through. Like, remember Frawley went a lovely bit of play. I think he steps someone from a ball through, and then he has a simple pass inside. He goes to kick it, it gets blocked down. Gibson Park, I think, get 2.
Yeah, Gibson Park. To be fair, it was like a complete slice, but he had one, like, particularly bad one.
A few bad ones. So he got blocked down. Another one. Remember, someone blocked it with their foot, I think, or something as well. So, like, from really, really good positions where you're like, you've got to pass to someone who is potentially through next to you. So, they did suffer a little bit from that, in fairness, in that game. Not all Harry's fault, but yeah, no, look, I think he's to my mind, what he gives you off the deck, he's very solid there. And his tackling, there's so much. I think he's better at both of those kind of key areas for me. And it's not so much of a difference attack wise with Prendergast that I'd be thinking it's you have to pick Prendergast. I think he needs to step it up. And I think, look, the other thing as well, Will, challenging thing for him in Leinster is that there's going to be a lot of chop and change just by virtue of the Irish kind of team kind of management, and how they need to manage players' time on feet. So he is gonna, like, when he comes in, he is gonna be raring to go, and he's gonna be all over the detail, and making sure that feeds through the team, because he's not going to get a consistent, like Crowley will get, 5 game blocks or whatever they can give him consistently, because he is the out and out starter then in Munster. It's too close a call at the moment in Leinster, and it's going to be chop and change. It's going to be 60 minutes here. He's not going to get 80 minutes 5 times in a row with Leinster, I don't think, unless Prendergast gets injured. So he's got to be mindful of that, and he's got to hit the ground running every week. And I do think he has to show a little bit more, um, in terms of getting the team organised and getting them in positions to be more of a threat. That he has a responsibility to do that as well, not just the other stuff. So watching him closely now over the next couple of weeks, see if he can push his way into that Six Nations squad, and catch Andy Farrell's eye on the attack side of the ball, because I think the rest of it is clear, in terms of what he brings and the difference that he has to Prendergast at this point in Prendergast's career.
Yeah, well, so the Connacht game is this coming weekend, and then it's La Rochelle on the Aviva. So whoever's starting in La Rochelle or against La Rochelle is, you'd assume that whatever way, people could argue that there was maybe rest implications for the last couple of selections, but whoever starts that home game against La Rochelle is the guy for the time being, because that's the biggest game. It's Raj back in Dublin, even though they're not the force they were. Leinster, when they play La Rochelle, will always want to beat them after what they did to them a couple of years ago. So that'll be one to keep an eye on over the next 2 weeks. Speaking about Haas, like Kieran Frawley, it was confirmed today, it had been kind of mooted last week, that he's going to Connacht at the end of the season on a 2-year contract, to play with Stuart Lancaster and be part of that. Obviously, he's someone we've discussed on this show a long time. His name has kind of faded over the last year or so, like ever since that All Blacks game in November 2024 when he came off the bench and played poorly. His career has kind of never been the same. At that point, when he came off the bench, he was Leinster's first choice 10, and he was, fighting with Jack Crowley for the Ireland jersey. One bad performance, one bad 20 minutes later, Sam Prendergast was Leinster's 10, and Frawley has never really got a look in. So this could be a chance for him to rebuild. But how do you reflect on the news that he's finally making the move?
I think it's 4 years too late, 4 or 5 years too late, sadly, for him. I think, I still think it's a good move for him, because he needs to play. He needs to go somewhere where he can start. I think he can make a big impact down there. Question is, where is he going to make the impact? He's become a bit of a Swiss Army knife. I'm assuming if he's going down there, he's probably set out a stall, or maybe he hasn't, that he wants to be a 10. Personally, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be setting him a stall. I like Murphy at 9. I thought he was really zippy at times. It looked a little bit disjointed at times against Ulster, but he looks like a nice player. I think they've got some good players in the pack. He's, if Aki is hanging around, you've got good go forward, and they've got some, good go forward with him around you, and he's obviously very experienced, and they've got some threat out wide. So I think there's lots of tools for him there to be successful if he wants to go in at 10. Problem is, what's he said to Lancaster to go down? As he said, look, I want to be a 10, and I want to be your 10. Because if he has, I think that's the right thing, and it's a good move. If he's just gone down because, I don't know, for other reasons, I can't think of another good reason to go down there. Bar maybe game time, I suppose. But I think he needs to pick a position. He's too late picking a position.
It's obvious. I think it's obvious 10. Like, Connacht actually have a good few centres, so I just feel like it's obvious that he might
play 15 and stuff as well. You know what I mean? But like, if Hansen comes back and he's fit and his body's healthy, like, he's a real threat out wide. As I said, Aki is still there hanging around. He's serious player. Certainly at this, he's obviously pushing on a little bit now. But yeah, I like lots of things. And Lancaster is a brilliant attacking coach. So you'd hope he'd be able to bring out the best in them there. It hasn't proved so far. He's had a tricky last couple of weeks, hasn't he?
The funny thing about Frawley going, people are like, oh, reunited with Lancaster. It's like, if you actually look at it, like, he barely played when Lancaster was there. Like, I don't think Lancaster didn't seem to rate him because he never really featured. 2 years in a row against La Rochelle in the Champions Cup final, Frawley was an unused substitute. Like, he didn't even get a minute of game time. And it was actually when Lancaster left that Frawley got more of an opportunity. Now, obviously, Johnny Sexton did retire too. Like, that obviously freed up some bandwidth. But Johnny didn't play a lot for Leinster even when he was there. He was minded a good bit, and Frawley still didn't feature in like big Champions Cup games a huge amount until Lancaster had left. But I'm with you. I think it's like 4 years too late. Some people say, oh, it's 2 years too late, but it kind of made sense to stay once Johnny was gone to see if he could make the breakthrough then. But it was like maybe a couple of years where, like, it was Sexton and then Ross Byrne and Harry Byrne, and Frawley was really scrapping for like maybe playing at 12 more, that maybe that was the time he could have left and really forged a path at that stage. But look, he's still in his 20s. Connacht I think could do it a good out half, and if the Lancaster project can get a bit better, it'll be interesting to see. But I don't know. I still feel like he's struggling to shake off that bad 20 minutes. I just think it was such a bad.
He collapsed. He's collapsed since. Remember in South Africa? Did he miss a kick from the pot? He had a few crazy things, and then even when he got back in the team, I think did come off the bench. I don't know, was it Argentina or Australia? He threw one into touch. Remember, it was like a clear 2-on. Well, it
Fiji.
wasn't 2-on-1. It was Fiji, wasn't it? It was he just had he's had a few bloopers since, and he's too good a player to have them. He's actually a lovely passer of the ball, huge kick, and nice variety as well. He's a great tackler. Like, he's got all the ability, and he actually looks like quite a good distributor under pressure on the line. So he should be great at 10, but you cannot let something like that, completely collapse you, and it looked like he had that for a couple of months after. And it looks like he steadied the ship. He looks pretty good at the moment, but I expect more from him. I really rated him a lot more highly than that, and I think he did fold a little bit under the gaze of Farrell. Now, I would argue as well, I didn't think he got much support. Like, if you look at how he's been treated versus how Prendergast has been treated, very, very different experiences. And Crowley as well, to a certain extent, although Crowley looks like he's mentally more able to deal with getting pressure.
I agree with you. Like, when he went into that window in November, as I said, like, he was Leinster starting 10. He had started the season really well that year. He had started in Croke Park, and Leinster had beaten Munster well. And then
he was the best player all year, Will.
And then
unbelievable.
Yeah, and then like he has a terrible 20 minutes, and then like Prendergast gets the nod in November, and then all of a sudden Leo Cullen then picks Prendergast, and then I felt like Frawley could have been more could have been done to restore his confidence, because he had been playing very good rugby. It was almost as if he was cast. They were like, oh well, we have Prendergast now, so we actually don't need to rebuild Frawley, and I don't feel like that was a good move. Now they might argue, look, that's complete rubbish. We were training with them, and we were doing this and we were doing that. But in terms of like on pitch game time, which is what you're looking at, or what I'm looking at, or what you can measure from our perspective, he didn't seem to be able to build. They couldn't build them back up, which I just think was a bad missed opportunity, because when we've seen him when he's playing well, he is a good player.
Yeah, and do you think so? The one thing I would say, well, that's been fairly consistent all the way through his career, is that it seems to me like the other 10 seem to manage the team better during the week. So whether there's a confidence issue, or whether it's a quality thing, or whether it's a focus thing, whatever it is, that was always kind of put out that, was it Ross was obviously, managed the week.
Running the week, yeah.
So, yeah. I didn't remember that line was kind of trotted out all the time. And like, there's probably something to that, is that like, whether he has a focus issue or something, you're kind of saying, well, like, this could be a good opportunity for him to kind of start again under Connacht, under Lancaster, and kind of right that wrong. But he, like, whatever he's doing to not get picked, like, it wasn't matching up with what was happening on the weekends. Like, you could see every time he puts his pitch out, he's got quality. You saw the drop kicks against South Africa. Like, he's got a bit of belief in him. He's got the ability. There's no doubt about the ability. You saw the kick against La Rochelle from past the halfway line. He's got all the skills. It seems to me like it must be some kind of mental issues or something like that, he's, whether it's a confidence thing during the week, or whether he's not loud enough, or whether he's not over the game plan enough, whatever it is, there's something holding him back from kicking on. And I'm leaning towards the mental side of the game, and having to improve that part of himself, because of how he probably reacted to that bad 20 minutes against New Zealand. He really collapsed after that, I thought, kind of form-wise. And you can't really let that happen, And then you can go through bad periods. I've gone through bad periods myself, but you kind of ground it out. Still getting picked every week, that kind of way. Even if you weren't in form, and the coach knew you weren't in form, you have to give them some kind of confidence somewhere. So whether that's training brilliantly, whether it's being confident around the setup, or whatever it is you have to do to get in the team, and get picked through those periods, he hasn't seemed to be able to do that, Will. And that just seems like a very harsh assessment, but I do think, it's also a true assessment, because, he hasn't been selected for any of the teams, and he did have these kind of big lapses in form and concentration for periods, I think. So I'd love to see him kick on down there and be a real threat, because he could be a bolter for that World Cup squad. Seriously, I mean, no one really has nailed that down. That 10 slot looks like probably the most open spot in the whole of the team.
Yeah, no, I was actually talking to someone yesterday about this, and we were like listing out all these out laughs, like Sam Prendergast, Jack Crowley, Harry Byrne, Kieran Frawley, and then say Ross Byrne who's in Gloucester, Joey Carberry who's in Bordeaux. There's like 6 or 7 guys, all of like similar-ish age. Obviously, some are younger than others. None, all of whom are decent, but none of whom have like grabbed hold of the jersey and said, "I'm going to be the starting out half." Like it wouldn't surprise me if 2 or 3 different guys were potentially starting for Ireland at the next World Cup. So there's a lot still to play for. One last thing on Frawley. Also, often picked up like an injury, an ill-timed injury, like maybe not massive, not as robust as some. Say Ross Byrne, to be fair to him, was very robust. Like he was very rarely not fit. He had one injury. I remember he got tackled.
Casey,
Casey like handed him off, and yeah, he like missed some time there. That was like and actually, ironically, that was when Frawley got a bit of an opportunity, I think, to play a bit more in the Champions Cup. So maybe a lack of robustness has counted against him as well.
No, you're right. Definitely has. Yeah, he's got some bad luck as well.
Yeah. So, but no, that'll be an interesting one to watch next season when he gets there. For the moment, though, Connacht, I think their 5th defeat from 7 league games. Are at the weekend. Connacht 24, Ulster 29. Like Connacht were 10-0 up in the first half and all over Ulster, and just didn't make their dominance count. A couple of knock-ons in the 22, a bad missed kick off the deck. Thought Sam Gilbert was going to be helpful in that regard, but a very cheap 3 points not to take that time. And then Ulster get 2 tries just before half time when they have barely been in the game, and all of a sudden they're leading, and then to be fair, they kick on and get 2 more tries, and then kind of in traditional Connacht fashion, then there's a burst of energy and they get 2 tries, and all of a sudden it's frantic and everyone's like, "Oh, we're back in it," and Ulster see it out. What did you make of it? Like I thought, like kind of the quality wasn't massively high, but again, I found it absorbing. I found it interesting. I had a good time watching the game, but from a Connacht perspective, still very disappointing. I maybe I was naive, but I thought Lancaster would have a fairly immediate impact. Maybe that was just an unrealistic expectation I had. But I looked at the squad and I thought, okay, I think there's enough talent there that with Lancaster kind of and his standards and the way he trains and drills teams, that they could kind of tidy up some elements. That's the thing. They've been quite untidy. Like, losing the 20-point lead away to the Ospreys, the Dragons game like 2 weeks ago when they conceded 48 points in the first 45 minutes. Yeah, I thought like the results are one thing, but it's more like some moment and some kind of patches of play that I'm like, oh, I thought Lancaster might be able to kind of sand off those edges maybe.
Yeah, I still think it's early in his reign. To me, like if you think about the resources he has, the last 2 jobs he's had at Leinster and at Racing, it's a very different proposition, Will. So, like, yes, you can do all those things. You can train a team within an inch of its life. But you got to remember, like, a lot of these guys, there's obviously a few locals that are playing for Connacht, but there's a lot of guys who are kind of come in from different places who haven't, I wouldn't say they're coming in with a world of confidence. Do you know what I mean? They might have been cast off by someone else. You look at Frawley coming down, even he'll be kind of going, well, like, I never really made it at Leinster. And I'm sure there's a lot of people end up at Connacht who are like that. So you have to build it up over a period of time. Like Pat Lam didn't do it straight away. There's a lot of people who were, Leinster Academy guys who never got into the Leinster team and Munster Academy. All those, this is what you're going to have to deal with oftentimes at Connacht. You're looking for value in the kind of transfer market. You also have to build up young guys locally, and there's probably not as much of a talent pool as there is in say Leinster, for example, or Munster even, I think, and probably Ulster as well. So there's a lot of challenges down there. So I'd be inclined to give him a little bit more rope, and I still think there'll be ups and downs, and probably more downs still in the first season than there will be. And maybe we see something different in the second half. But from what I've seen so far, it looks like this is going to be a tricky season for them. And I'd like to give him more time to kind of build in those kind of habits and build in those kind of big pillars of your game that you have to rely on to kind of win more games than not. I think they're still in that going to lose more games than going to win more games bracket to me, just from what I'm seeing from them. And look, as well, you're dealing with things like Hansen's injury. They're big players to be losing for periods of time. Like that's Aki. Was that his first game back as well?
He's played a couple.
He's played a couple, has he? But was he only back the week before though, Will? I feel like he might have been anyway. Look, so he hasn't been around all season anyway. So he's a big player for them as well. Beelum hasn't been around all season as well, for parts of the season. So, losing players like that, it's kind of key for him to get all his guys on deck as well. And then, so there's a few things. I'm making excuses for him. You would expect it to be better, but I still see a few things that I thought were pretty good as well. I mean, the first try, like I thought Ulster's defense wasn't great, but it was still a lovely bit of finishing. The one from the
Finn
was it from the
Tracy.
mall? It was a lovely, yeah, really really lovely bit of play. And look, Stockdale doesn't do great. He's in a bit of no man's land. And they probably should still catch him, but it was a nice bit of play to get there. You could see the ball handling was good, and I thought there were some positives there. I thought they looked, as you said, a little bit messy when they got, like, it was almost like they were overexcited, trying to do everything a little bit too quickly. I thought there was a few times for Murphy, there's players getting in his way when, he was getting it out really quickly and they were kind of getting momentum. They were missing a clean, or they were getting in his way, or they were getting in the passing channel, or they were bundling him over. So I thought they didn't allow him to kind of, get over his work and really kind of get the team humming. You can see he's an energizer bunny. His passing, he's got great zip in it. I really like him. And I think he's a really, really, really nice player. I'm interested to see how far he goes, but they weren't getting the best out of him because it was kind of a little bit messy around the ruck. So I think there's a little bit of tidying up to do there. I think that'll help them kind of play a little bit more expansively, and take advantage of probably what Stuart's trying to do in terms of playing at high pace, and lots of accuracy, lots of good ball handling, lots of good kind of well-timed runs and good deception. If you want to do all those things, the heartbeat of the game is still the ruck. And I just think they were still a little messy there. Ulster were able to get in at key moments and stop them from kind of putting up a fairly big score. And then I did think defensively, there was. I actually thought some of the tries were quite nice. Some nice ball handling.
Yeah. The third Ulster try was very good. The one that kind of they went wide.
The second one was nice too.
Yeah.
And the short side, that was nice. But I think it was Stockdale. Stockdale gets a lovely pass away. And I look, you'd still like your defense to do a little bit better, wouldn't you? Like if you concede it, you're saying, I'm disappointed I conceded that. But if you get it, you're kind of going, oh, that was nice play too, to take advantage of that. So there's a few of those kind of moments where they need to tighten up. You can't let them have one of those tries is probably fine. Two before halftime, you're saying, they should have stopped one of them. Do you know what I mean? That was my feeling on it. If you were more on it,
to go in at half time on after that half 2 points down was crazy. Like they should have been 10 points clear, like with all the possession they had, and I think they conceded like 3 penalties in a row just before half time that allowed Ward get the second try. So yeah, that was very disappointing.
It felt like a bad part of the game for him. Did you, like, I don't know, when you were watching it, I was kind of thinking, like this is,
well,
it doesn't feel good now.
Either side of half time, it was probably like, in terms of minutes, it was probably only like 15 to 20 minutes when Ulster scored all 4 of their tries. Like it was literally just like 10 minutes either side of half time, and Connacht besides that were like had much more of the game. It was
that's kind of what I'm saying though. You have that feeling going in at half time, you're like, like it's just a wind out of the sails job, and you could feel like it didn't surprise me at all that kind of Ulster broke them down a little bit afterwards,
but that's the kind of thing I was saying when I was like, I thought like that 10 minutes before half time was what I would have associated Connacht with maybe in the last couple of years. And I thought, just kind of, despite dominating, going in somehow 2 points down, I thought Lancaster would be able to kind of get them a little more composed. So like, say the 3 penalty concessions in a row that led to that second Ulster try, that maybe that would have been kind of ironed out even at this stage potentially. That's why I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, and I probably look at it the other way. So I was kind of thinking that, maybe a little stingier, maybe a little bit out of your world, but more I would have felt like they would have got another try from the dominance. That's kind of what I felt. Lancaster might have had a bit more of an impact. Kind of way. I still think the key thing for them is going to be getting bodies on deck and being stingier defensively. Like, conceding, what is it, 29 points, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, pretty much 30, right? So call it 30 points. It's hard to win games when you're conceding 30, and it's at home. So you should be a little bit stingier at home no matter what. Now, look, it's a fast track and all that, but still, they need to be conceding one less try, probably scoring one more try. And to me, I felt like that's where, you'd expect maybe Lancaster you'd have hoped Lancaster would have had an impact there. But my feeling was always that this wasn't going to be an unbelievably easy fix down there. You know what I mean? Like it's a big job. It's a very challenging job, and I still think he's a great bit of business, because he's the guy who's going to, like, someone like Frawley would never have considered Connacht ever. I don't think. I think he would have had realistically, he would have had options. I think in the UK, possibly potentially France. I don't know. Maybe not off the last year, but he certainly would have at different points. I don't think he considers Connacht if Lancaster's not the coach. And I think he'll be able to draw in 1 or 2 players like that. I still think he'll be brilliant for the young guys down there. the results, you're up against some pretty good competition there, with teams that have more resources, and who are more established as well, bar Munster. So they're always big challenges to come up against as well. So I'm leaning towards giving them a bit more role.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if any other Leinster players go. Every time I log onto Twitter, it feels like people are saying Jordan Larmour is in the pipeline, but we'll see. People tweeting that, but I like. He's been one name that's been bandied about, but
He was very good in the Aviva a couple of weeks ago.
yeah, picked up an injury.
He looked strong, looked powerful.
But
He just needs to stay injury free,
yeah,
doesn't he?
it'll be interesting to see if he can get any other Leinster players to come down, because there would probably be a few guys he might have his eye on that aren't getting huge game time that he could persuade. Just on Ulster before we finish up, a bonus point win for them. They've got bonus points in every game, try bonus points, bar the Leinster one when they got 3 tries and couldn't kick on after the break, which would have been very disappointing because they had Leinster on the rack at half time on that one. But I think they're playing some really good stuff this year. I've really enjoyed watching them play. To some of their individual guys, like I love watching Werner Koch. He was great business. He's just like an all-action.
He's an energizer, but he's great, isn't he?
Yeah, kind of like he looked like a heavy metal kind of, the hair, and he's just bopping around the place. I think Stockdale's having a good season. I like Zach Ward. He's a big, the guy that came from the sevens. Andy Ward's son, so obviously comes from a good pedigree. Yeah. Where are you? Where are you in Ulster? I'm actually quite bullish on. Like I don't think they're going to win the URC or anything, but I just think they're a lot better this year than I thought. They had Angus Bell and Tom O'Toole to come off the bench at the weekend. So they were able to select their team like that and have that luxury where that's obviously a lot of power to come on. Have you been impressed with how they've been playing?
Yeah, look, the key thing is going to be I'm going to keep going back to this because I really believe what I said at the start of the year when we were talking through all the teams. Like Connacht, they have got to get all their guys on deck, and when they do, they're a good team. So Stockdale's fit, and he said obviously had his injury woes. Izuchuku was good. I thought he was very strong, great tackles. He was excellent. I like Koch. I think he's very good. He's so aggressive in the contact. He's the kind of guy that can lift your team, because he's so physical. He had a few great moments. I actually like Murphy at 10.
Yeah,
I think Murphy's actually quite good.
Yeah,
good player. And I agree. I'm glad you mentioned the kind of attacking side because I think they look like they're the most together of all the Irish provinces from an attacking perspective. I should have mentioned McCluskey when I was talking about kind of big players. He's a key guy for them. And a lot revolves around him. And he kind of gives them a sense of calm, I think, in that back line. So yeah, no, I agree. I think they're in a really good position. It's nice to see them up the table. Nice to see Richie kind of getting a little bit of kudos. I hope they can hang on kind of for the end of the season and kind of be in the mixer for the knockouts. I think their team, you probably, if they get everyone out on deck, they're not a team you'd probably want to play.
And they could be at home in the knockout stages, because one thing that's worth pointing out is they've already been to South Africa and they got a really good win against the Sharks, who had a full strength South Africa Springbok laden team. They won and got 5 points there. They took another point away from the Lions game. So say we were talking about Munster earlier, Munster, after losing 2 home games in a row and having Ulster Friday night, they still have to go to South Africa later in the year. Getting that trip out of the way early and getting such a positive result. I was actually looking through the Ulster fixtures earlier. The longer the season goes on, they have some very winnable games, a few home games still to come. They have that refixed game against Edinburgh away at some stage, but depending on when that is, you might be down. The Scottish guys might not be playing if it's in the Six Nations window.
I was just going to say that they're less impacted by the international stuff
exactly.
than the other teams. So,
it makes it big. They don't have to rest and rotate the way, say, Munster do on Friday night, for instance. Richie can go and pick whatever team he really wants to pick, whereas Clayton McMillan might not be able to play Jack Crowley or Ty Byrne or Craig Casey. So they're in a good position. Not being in the Champions Cup for 1 year obviously isn't good, but one upside is that they ought to be able to target the league a lot more. And if they end up getting a home game and finishing in the top 4, they can beat. I'd say Leinster at their very best are probably the only team you could say, okay, they wouldn't be able to maybe beat them at Ravenhill, but I'd say they could beat anyone else.
I'd say close enough.
Yeah,
tough place to go and play. Yeah, no,
they're playing well.
Yeah, I also think the Bulls aren't obviously playing great, but I always think when they at the end of the season they're a nightmare to play against. With that pack and the scrum. Stormers obviously look good at the moment as well, so. Still think the South African teams could probably turn them over, maybe, but no, I don't. I think everyone would be a tough game. No matter. I completely agree. And it's great to see Richie doing well. I mean, I think he's the one thing you could say is, if you're not going to be playing those matches, in those Champions Cup matches, right? It's bloody important that the time that you spend together is either used well for rest, so he can get his bodies back on the pitch, which is key for Ulster. It's been for 10 years, it's been a problem getting their best players out on the pitch consistently, but also they look fluid in attack. So that tells me that they're working on the right stuff on the training ground as well. So he's obviously doing good work behind the scenes, and you think as well he's obviously he's recruited very well. I don't know how involved in the process he is, but I'm assuming he's very involved. I think Augustus looks good. Bell is good. Like they've made some good signings. Will I think all the for all the challenges they have off the pitch, some of the financial stuff and all that's probably still bubbling in the background. There is quality there, and the coach looks like he's doing the right things, and that's all you can ask. And I think once you do that, and they put themselves in position consistently to this season so far, to be kind of winning games. And you're right. Like even the two games that they've lost, the Leinster one was very winnable. Like Leinster put on the power show at the end when they brought the guys off the bench. But that game was in the balance. It was a very, very tight game, and they were very good in that first half. So, I think they'll be quietly confident that they can kind of kick this thing on and keep going. I think you're right. I think the fixtures, they've only played 7, versus say Munster and Leinster haven't played 8. So yeah, I think they're in a good position, Will, and they've got some really good players.
And one area Richie Murphy definitely would have been key in is getting Mark Sexton in as the attack coach at the end of last season, where he obviously felt he would benefit from getting a guy who he had worked with at the Ireland under-20s level, where they had a lot of success together. And there's a lot of people, you just said it there yourself, but people have been enamoured with the attack. And even I watched the first game of the season against the Dragons, and I know it was only the Dragons, but as we've seen from the Connacht game and even against Leinster a few weeks ago, they're not too bad this year. But Ulster from the get-go this season, from the opening game, they looked very fluid and looked like, as you say, the time spent on the training pitch was bearing fruit. And they rested players against Cardiff in the Challenge Cup, and they lost that game in a disappointing kind of late collapse. But it served them pretty well in the festive period. They didn't beat Leinster, as you say, but I thought they played well. And I feel like you can stand over that decision because they brought a good performance. They beat Connacht away. And if they can go and beat Munster at home on Friday, 2 wins out of 3 and a losing bonus point to get away to Leinster, that's a good return with some good fixtures to come. So yeah, that's basically it for this week's show.
One time we don't have Jonathan on.
I know. Every time we talk at length about Ulster. The last time he was on, I gave him like 30 seconds.
There's no Champions Cup.
I gave him 30 seconds. I actually feel cruel about that. But next time Jonathan's on, we can have a good chat about how Ulster are getting on, because I'm sure the mood is significantly better in Belfast than it was this time last year. That's all we have time for on this week's episode of The Left Wing. We'll be back next week. We have Leinster Connacht, we have Munster Ulster. We'll be looking ahead to round 3 of the Champions Cup. All that to come. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Luke for joining me. Thanks to everyone who's listened. Actually, this is our last show of 2025, so thanks to everyone who's listened across the entire year.
Do the big sign off, we'll do it.
We'll be back in 2026. It's only 1 week away, so we won't be gone for too long. Thanks a million to everyone who continues to listen. We love doing the show, so great to have you all here with us. So until 2026, goodbye.